Hey there, my name's Niandra. In this video, I'm going to give some tips for Mercy when paired with these following heroes. If you want tips for the other DPS, see my first pairing video linked in the description below. So let's start with Pharah. At the moment, because of the lowered healing output, Mercy is mostly ran with main supports. This means you should be able to afford a lot of focus on Pharah while the second healer tends to the rest. That being said, while pocketing Pharah, I generally flick my camera view down so I can keep track of ally positions and whether they need help. This will probably become especially important with Moira after her healing nerf goes through. With Pharah, I try to be heavy with damage boost because honestly, my healing isn't going to do a whole lot against good counter players. Our goal is to kill the enemy quickly before 50 health per second becomes an issue. Like you would on the ground, consider your position and use terrains like buildings nearby for cover. For the most part, Pharah will allow you to position safer in the air, but if you can attend to her from the ground, that can be a better play if the enemy team is attempting to heavily counter her. Talking of buildings though, Overwatch has a lot of roofs you can slide off, and I love abusing these while flying with Pharah. They're a real fantastic way of making yourself harder to hit while airborne. When generally in the air, sometimes I'll let myself fall then fly back up to Pharah, or just randomly tap angelic descent a few times, just anything that makes me a bit harder to hit. Whatever your level of pocket though, communication with Pharah is crucial. If I suddenly stop following her, I say immediately. If I see Pharah push up without me, I tell her she's alone. Let's be real, a lot of Pharah players expect you to always be there for them, and I don't want them to act like I'm pocketing them when I'm not. One thing I only noticed fairly recently is that Pharah kind of has anti-synergy with Valkyrie. You generally want your beam attached to as many as possible, but Pharah often plays away from everyone else. What I've generally been doing here is communicating with Pharah and looking at her while beaming the rest of my team in case she needs help. Last of all, and it's kinda silly, but if you're following Pharah over a slippery building like the beginning of Icon Walled Attack or Black Forest, be careful about your GA usage so you don't fall behind. Remember that if you fly to someone and press space, the cooldown starts after it ends. I've actually thrown a couple of fights because I wasn't able to do the second GA in time before Pharah went over the wall. I don't know if it's just me who's done this, but I thought I'd throw it out there. Next, Reaper, who's an amazing damage boost target despite his short range, as long as I take it into consideration. This mainly means being careful with positioning and often using corners or high ground. Because of his lifesteal, I'll often prioritise damage boost even if he's somewhat injured, then flick to heal during his Wraith ability or reload. I generally want to do this during his ultimate too, and if I'm slightly nervous, I may flick between the two modes. Obviously, I'm not saying to never heal Reaper, I would definitely be a lot more cautious with a stun heavy enemy team or if he's heavily surrounded. Also, as I said, Reaper's range is very short and his damage may be low as he initially engages with the target. This might be a good opportunity to prioritise heal if he's taking damage from another source. Last of all, I stream a lot of alt account comp and I've spent good time in Platinum recently. In those mid to low ranks, Reaper is a powerhouse and a good one can essentially control the match. If you are in this SR range, definitely keep an eye on him and get that blue beam going. Next, Soldier 76. He's fallen pretty heavily due to power creep, but if Soldier can get his damage past shields, he can be a decent pocket, especially during his ult. Some soldiers will play away from the rest of the team, and a good example of this is the right side roof of Hanamura Point A defense. Whether I go with him to pocket really depends on who the rest of my team is. Like, I'll usually do it if I have confidence in my second healer to keep everyone else stable. While pocketing Soldier, I'll flip my camera view to the rest of my team, so if I need to leave him to help them, I quickly can. Last of all, Soldier is the only non-support who can see the I need healing command in text chat. You could use this if you need his healing station, but asking via voice chat will be consistently better. Next, SOMBRA. Not too much to say on this one, you generally just both do your own thing. I played around in custom games and this is what it looks like when Mercy has beam on an invisible friendly SOMBRA. I don't know what you want to do with this information, but be careful. As a damage boost target, SOMBRA can be okay if you're fighting as a team, but a part of me feels like if you can consistently damage boost her, one of you's gotta be out of position. Next, SYMMETRA. Okay, while writing notes for these pairing videos, I tried really hard to avoid tips that were simply pocket and damage boost. Well, for SYMMETRA, pocket and damage boost when you can. In my last video, I talked about how SYMMETRA has very high damage but little survivability, and Mercy can make up for it pretty well. When SYMMETRA's photon barrier wall is active, she doesn't generate ult charge until it's removed, which will often be 12 seconds later. If I don't have to use it as an opportunity for healing, I usually do one of two things. Either damage boost Sim and use the wall as an extra layer of survivability, or use it as an opportunity to damage boost others who don't have ult to catch them up. A little tip for the teleporter, if you hold down your interact key and walk towards it, you'll automatically go through once in range. This also works if you hold it down as SYMMETRA places it next to you. That being said, as Mercy, be careful with being the first person through the teleporter if it's being used to push in, which you often see on 2CP attack. The reason for this is, if you teleport and it gets destroyed, you may be stuck in a bad position. However, if the rest of your team teleports and you get left behind, you can often recover because the exit should be within your line of sight. Guardian Angel and SYMMETRA's teleporter both have a range of 30 meters, so you should generally be able to keep up with it. Next, TORBJORN. Personally, I generally gravitate towards blue beaming the other DPS unless there's someone like Doomfist. Keeping track of Torb's turret can be pretty useful. In this old VOD, the enemy team has Tracer and SOMBRA, so I intentionally play near it for protection since it's good against both. Tracer has a small health pool and being picked at slowly forces her to recall, and SOMBRA's hack is interrupted by damage. As for TORBJORN's ult, Mercy's damage boost acts pretty weird. You can't damage boost the lava on the floor, but you can boost the initial tick of damage it does. So I looked it up and that tick does 25 and 32.5 while boosted, so not really worth it. Next, Tracer. Like SOMBRA, Doomfist and Wrecking Ball, I generally don't go out of my way for Tracer as she can be fairly self-sufficient. That being said, if she's playing close to me, I keep track of her position because it is vital for Tracer to be at full health when possible. In my last guide, I mentioned on attacking King of the Hill, I often damage boost whoever's pushed furthest ahead, and Tracer is sometimes my choice due to the increased movement speed she shares with Genji. Mercy's beam stays on a target the left line of sight for 1.4 seconds. A lot of people think it's 3 seconds, and I did too, but that's actually for Zen's Harmony Orb. Anyway, this linger applies to Tracer when she blinks out of range. So what I sometimes do on attack is blue beamer as she blinks in, then attend to my closer ally once it breaks. Last of all, Tracer on defense is a huge liability at mid to low ranks, especially on 2CP. Attackers want to pick and then to push in on it because numbers advantage is so crucial in Overwatch and a sloppy Tracer just hands it to them. I don't have a whole lot of advice here because I can't force someone to swap, but if it's an issue, consider asking them to change to a character that plays safer because you and the other healer are struggling to help them. I think framing it this way is a lot better than just, "Hey Tracer, switch, you're garbage!" And last of all, Widow. In my last guide, I mentioned that damage boost recently got changed, how if you amplify damage that would have killed the target without the boost, Mercy doesn't gain anything from it. Widow is one of the hardest affected by this because of the incredibly high burst damage and already one hit potential with headshots. I still consider her a very solid damage boost target, but I don't necessarily hard pocket Widow the way I used to, and if it were a choice between her or someone like McCree, I'd most likely pick him instead. If you are pocketing Widow, remember to flick your camera view about and watch for flanks to call out since a scoped Widow might not notice someone sneaking up on her. Keeping track of your Widow's position while not attending to her will also be useful because she'll often be distanced from a fight. This means she can be a great fly path if you need to get back, or just distance yourself from danger to get health regeneration kicking. Widow playing far back will often make her a safe res target, but definitely ask yourself if your team can afford you leaving the fight for 2 to 3 seconds as you fly to the corpse, res and fly back. Also, take into consideration who killed her. If it's an enemy Widow, she most likely has vision on the corpse, so it's crucial to have cover or be aware if she's distracted. When contesting a big fight, point B of 2CP defense especially, I tend to prioritise resing Widow less than others unless she's obviously safest or popping off. During a stall, I just kind of feel like other heroes are likely to contribute more. For example, a tank brings a huge health pool, Mei brings stall, Moira brings healing, and so on. And there we go, that's DPS pairings covered, and the next one will look at tanks. Thank you so much for watching, feel free to check out my Patreon where I do Mercy VOD reviews for $5, and have a nice day.